Coming in at number 10 now, we have the 98 Rock. At the start of World War II, Japan captured 98 American soldiers on a small Pacific island. The US struck back in an attempt to free the soldiers. Japan knew they were going to lose the battle, and so they decided to kill the 98 soldiers instead of letting them go free. One of the soldiers managed to escape and hide. In his last moments, he found a rock on the beach and carved 98 US prisoners of war and the day's date. When he was found, the Japanese admiral beheaded him personally. However, his message made sure the 98 were never forgotten by the people who found it. Next up at number 9 now, we have the message in a bottle. In 2016, a demolition crew in New Mexico found a time capsule from 1968. It was a bottle containing letters written by kids. A lot of it was normal stuff about their favorite TV shows at the time, but one message stood out as pretty creepy. It was written by a boy who said he was called Greg Lee Youngman. It read, "I am dead. I go to Montgomery School. This is the olden school name. I was born in 1900. You auto, now I dead. My favorite subject is spooking the police. I play the guitar. In case you don't know what it is a board with strings on them. I am 10 years old. See you later, savages." What did you guys make of that? Was it the ghost of a 10-year-old boy who liked to scare police, or was it just some kid being a real savage? Really weird either way. Next up at number 8, we have the Nazi time capsule. In 2016, archaeologists in Poland found a time capsule from Hitler's Third Reich. It was buried by the Nazis in 1934 before the Second World War started. They wanted it to be dug up in the distant future by people living in a utopian Nazi world. Obviously, that didn't happen, which makes the contents of the time capsule that much more chilling. Inside there were newspapers, 2 copies of Hitler's Mein Kampf, documents from Nazi Germany, and a letter to future generations. The contents were put in a Polish museum and are now a scary reminder of what could have been. Moving on to number 7 now, we have the Voynich manuscript. This is easily one of the most mysterious things in human history. It's a codex that has been carbon dated to the 15th century. It contains hundreds of pages of illustrations and diagrams of plants, people, and astronomical images, but here's the strange thing. Every page contains text written in an unknown language. It's been over 100 years now since it surfaced, and in that time, every genius codebreaker and linguistic expert in the world has tried to decipher what the words say, and they have all failed. The pictures seem to show that it's a complex analysis of life and the universe, but who wrote it? If they had a language, surely they couldn't have been the only one of their kind. What do you guys think of this mystery? Coming out at number 6 now, we have the Emerald Tablet. This is an incredible mystery because it doesn't actually exist anymore. It was said to be like the Philosopher's Stone, containing the key to turning any metal into pure gold. It was mentioned in an Arabic book around the 7th century, it was then translated into Latin in the 12th century, and even Isaac Newton himself made a copy of it. The problem is, the text from the Emerald Tablet reads more like a list of 14 riddles. Many people have tried to decode its secrets, and all have failed. Alright, moving on to the number 5 spot now, we have the Nazca lines. These huge 1,000-foot geoglyphs in southern Peru depict animals such as birds, fish, llamas, monkeys, and even humans, but only from above. They weren't properly documented until pilots spotted them in the early 1900s. The thing is though, they were made about 2,000 years ago, long before the invention of flying. Some researchers have said there was no way they could have been made unless you could see them from above. So, if they couldn't fly back then, how did they make the lines, or more importantly, who or what were they for? Coming in at number 4 now, we have the glowing rocks. Hendra Down is a collection of Neolithic age stones put together in England about 5,000 years ago. That's a couple of thousand years older than Stonehenge. In 2016, scientists made an incredible discovery. There were markings on the stone that could only be seen at night. They first realized this when the symbols appeared from a camera flash. Then they realized the stones around the area contain quartz, which glows in the dark when it's smashed together with another piece of quartz. The researchers knew that the people who built this associated darkness with the supernatural and strange pagan rituals, but that's about everything they know. Who the messages were for and what they meant remains shrouded in the mystery of time. Okay, coming in at the number 3 spot now, we have the Codex Gigas. This early 12th century book is also known as the Devil's Bible. It's almost 9 inches thick and weighs 165 pounds. It was said to have been written by a monk who had been locked up for breaking his vows. He promised that if the monastery let him live, he would write them a book that would contain all of human knowledge. Legend says he did this by selling his sold to the devil. The book contains the whole of the Bible, as well as copies of other historical texts. It contains 310 pages in total, even a drawing of the devil, but it's missing 12 pages. Some say these missing pages contain satanic text to conjure the devil himself. Okay, next up at number 2 now, we have the photograph. In 2014, Reddit user Mariah KL13 shared with everyone a creepy bottle she found on a California beach. It looked more like a jar and was filled with bright pink water. She emptied out the strange liquid and saw a piece of paper wrapped up neatly with a black ribbon. She opened the jar and unfolded the paper. It was a washed out photograph of a woman with a bunch of needles sticking out of them. Reddit users went crazy with theories on this. Was it made by a murderer? Was it a curse? How long had it been just drifting in the ocean for? The creepy contents left more questions than answers. And finally at number 1 now, we have the text message. This one doesn't come from the distant past, but it creeped out a lot of people. In early 2017, Reddit users started sharing stories about how they were getting texts from unknown numbers. That wasn't too strange, that happens every day. What was really strange was the texts were coming from the year 2003. The numbers always seemed to start with 19. Quite often the text would just be completely blank, but sometimes they would contain random characters, such as this one that just said !S. Now the official explanation for all of this was that it was just a technical glitch. Others said it was people from the past trying to contact their future selves. I honestly have no idea. Either way, I know I would freak out if I got a text from an unknown number in the past. What about you guys?
This one made me teary at number 10. We have a goodbye from a young boy to his friend. In April 2016, a Florida man named Steve Menson found a message in a bottle as he took a stroll along the beach. The message was from a 5th grader called Jonathan, who was writing a note to his friend Daniel, who sadly had died. The heartbreaking message reads, "Dear Daniel, I'm really sorry that you passed away, and if you were alive, me, you and Will would be playing football, soccer and basketball. You are my best friend." It continues to say, "Our favourite song was Austin Moon, and I hope you have fun with Jesus. From your best friend, Jonathan Torres." Steve said he didn't know how long the note had been in the ocean or where it was posted from, but it moved him so much that he even penned an open reply to the young boy. In his reply he said, "Daniel is lucky to have you as a friend." He continued by saying, "Perhaps in your next touchdown, goal or basket, you can dedicate it to Daniel." Coming into number 9, we have wedding vows. In 2014, a bottle was found in Cancun, Mexico by a couple on holiday. It contained wedding vows to a woman named Danielle, which were very, very sweet. The couple who found the bottle had no idea where and when it came from, as it had no date. Of course, this just goes to show that love is truly timeless. More romance in a bottle at number 8. On Christmas Day 1946, 21-year-old Frank Hayostek, an American war veteran, tossed a bottle into the ocean, and it was found by an 18-year-old Irish milkmaid by the name of Breda O'Sullivan. The letter read, "Dear Finder, I'm an American soldier, 21 years old, just plain American of no wealth, but enough to get along with. This is my 3rd Christmas from home." The pair exchanged letters for 7 years following that, and then they finally met when Frank saved enough money to fly over to Ireland. Here's a picture of the pair. A message found 101 years later, coming in at number 7. This at the time was thought to be the world's oldest message in a bottle. It was found over 100 years after it was thrown into the water. Richard Platts threw this bottle into the Baltic Sea in 1913, the same waters it was then found in 2014. Platts was 20 when he wrote the message, and he included 2 postage stamps in the bottle. This was so the finder could reply to him at no cost. Sadly, he died in 1946 when he was in his 50s, and he never knew his granddaughter Angela. Angela was then reunited with the message when the bottle was found. She has since loaned the message and the old beer bottle to the Hamburg Museum in Germany. At number 6, we have the actual current oldest message in a bottle. In 1906, the Marine Biological Association of the UK threw a message in a bottle into the water in Devon. It washed up a whopping 108 years later on April the 17th, 2015 in Amrum Island in Germany. The bottle had a postcard in it asking the finder to send it back to the NBA for a reward of 1 shilling. That was around 12 pence back in the early 1900s. Finder Marianne Winkler was given the reward, which is pretty cute. Hopefully the NBA will learn more about currents since the discovery. Coming into number 5, we have this cryptic photo. So this was actually technically a message in a jar, but whatever. Tied up in a black ribbon, the finder was greeted with a creepy image of a woman in a dress with real needles sticking in her. I think if I found found this, I would run very, very far away. Like, is this some kind of weird voodoo message in a bottle? A message in a bottle led to a new life for a Vietnamese soldier at number 4. At Christmas time in 1979, Mr. and Mrs. Peckham were on board a boat in Hawaii, vacationing from mainland USA. They were messing around on their cruise ship and tossed a wine bottle overboard. The bottle contained $1, a postal address, and the promise of a reward to the finder. 4 years and 9,000 miles later, the message washed up in Thailand. Former soldier Van Nugent found the message, having escaped a concentration camp in Vietnam. He replied to the message, and eventually, to cut a much longer story short, he met up with the Peckhams, who helped him and his family escape to the United States and gain refugee status under their sponsorship. Amazing. Coming into number 3, we have a final journey. A father by the name of Mel passed away in 2014, aged 77. His family wanted to do something to immortalize him. He was a keen fisherman, so they sent out a message in a bottle following his waterside memorial service. The note included a picture of him and read, "My real name is Mel, and I have 3 beautiful kids and a beautiful wife of almost 54 years. I love the ocean, deep sea fishing, abalone hunting with my 2 sons, and visiting tide pools with my whole family. Today my family is laying me to rest in a place that I love, the ocean, so this starts my journey. If you find this message in a bottle, please go to my Facebook page, post a picture of yourself and where you found me, then send me back on my journey." I love this idea, it's really cute. It was found on Francis Beach in California, where it had travelled several miles down the coast. Mel hasn't been found since, so he must be on a much longer journey this time. Really sad at number 2, we have a Titanic goodbye. This is a heartbreaking story indeed. Irish 19-year-old Jeremiah Burke was on board the Titanic when it sank. Before his trip, his religious mother had given him a bottle of holy water. As the boat sank, he emptied it and wrote a message which he threw out to sea. The message said, "From Titanic, goodbye all, Burke of Glanmire, Cork," and it washed up a year later on a beach just a few miles away from his family home, which is absolutely incredible if you think about it. Sadly, Jeremiah's mother died of heartbreak before it was found, but luckily his surviving family were given the message. They then donated it to the Titanic exhibit at the Cope Heritage Centre. Okay, this is truly heartbreaking at number 1. We have this wartime message. In 1914, 26-year-old Private Thomas Hughes of Stockton-on-Tees, England, left a message in a bottle for his wife. His wife had just given birth to their daughter just 2 years before he'd gone off to war. The message read, "Dear wife, I'm writing this note on this boat and dropping it into the sea just to see if it will reach you. Ta-ta, sweet." He then signed it off, "For the present, your hubby." The other side of the note then said, "Sir or madam, youth or maid, would you kindly forward the enclosed letter and earn the blessing of a poor British soldier on his way to the front line." Thomas was killed just days later in frontline fighting, and the message was found off the coast of Essex by a fisherman over 80 years later. Sadly, by this point, his wife had died, but the message did find its way to his 86-year-old daughter, who was totally overwhelmed, saying it touched her deeply to know that his message had found her.
Coming at number 10 now, we have the Pizza app. In 2015, a story emerged of a woman who used the Pizza Hut app to escape from her abusive boyfriend. Cheryl Treadway was a 25-year-old woman who was being held against her will by her boyfriend. He was high on meth and had a knife, so running out of the door was not really an option for her. So one night, she convinced him to let them order a pizza through the Pizza Hut app. When the order came through, it was for a large pepperoni pizza, and the message read, "Please help, get 911 to me." The Pizza Hut employees passed the details on to the police, who arrived at the house to arrest the boyfriend and get the woman and her children to safety. What an incredible story. Next up at number 9, we have torture. In 1965, Jeremiah Denton's jet was shot down during the Vietnam War in 1965. He was taken as a prisoner of war by the North Vietnamese. Now, he was one of the earliest and highest ranking officials ever to be taken prisoner, so his captors forced him to participate in a television interview. It was shown in the US. During the interview, Denton kept blinking. He told them it was because of how bright the television lights were, but actually those blinks were sending a message. You see, the blinks were Morse code. When the US decoded them, they realized he was spelling out the word torture. It was a very scary message for the US government to receive. Denton was released in 1973 after 8 years as a prisoner. He was awarded for his bravery. Coming in at number 8 now, we have My Dear Mummy. In 1940, Sub-Lieutenant John Pryor was captured by the Germans during World War II. He would send home innocent letters talking about the prison's vegetable garden or what book he happened to be reading. However, they all contained secret messages about how he had been captured and what was going on inside the prison camp. They were coded very complexly, and when John came to write his memoirs in 1980, he had actually forgotten his own code. It took a whole team of mathematicians to finally crack it. However, they were about 40 years too late. I don't have time to go into how the code works exactly, but I don't doubt that John Pryor was a very clever man. At number 7 now, we have the pizza call. This was a story shared on Reddit by Keith Weisinger. He was a police dispatcher who answered emergency calls. One day, he answered the phone. 911, what is your emergency? 123 Main Street. Okay, what's going on there? I'd like to order a pizza for delivery. Ma'am, you've reached 911. Yeah, I know. Can I have a large with half pepperoni, half mushrooms and peppers? Keith was very confused at this point, but the penny dropped when he asked if she couldn't talk about this emergency because there was someone in the room with her. She replied, yes, that's correct. He sent a police officer to the house and found her beaten up with her drunken boyfriend there. He was arrested. Keith praised the woman for her quick thinking and ingenuity. Next up at number 6 now, we have the Dutch train hostage crisis. In 1975, 7 terrorists seized a train with 50 passengers on board in the Netherlands. The driver was immediately killed. On the 3rd day, another hostage was killed. The Dutch government were paralysed. Did they hold out and hope for the terrorists to surrender, or did they try and save them, risking a bloody gun battle that could kill all of the hostages? Then, one night, a man aboard the train used a mirror to flash a message at the police in Morse code. It said, "Come and help us get out." This convinced the government to take action. Less than 24 hours later, a gun battle broke out. There were injuries and deaths on both sides, but finally, the soldiers were able to rescue most of the hostages. Maybe we should all learn Morse code. Next up at number 5 now, we have ISIS. In 2014, terrorists claiming to be in ISIS took hostages in a cafe in Sydney. A mother called Mel said that she had received a message from her 18-year-old son who was one of the hostages. Now this is despite the terrorists strictly controlling contact with anyone outside of that cafe. The text simply said, "Mum, I'm in the Lindt Cafe in Sydney." Her heart stopped and she texts back asking, "What is going on? Are you okay?" He replied, "I'm okay mum, can't talk." That was the last she heard from him. Fortunately, he did make it out alive. However, 2 hostages were killed during the event. Alright, at number 4 now, we have the pirates. In 2009, Paul and Rachel Chandler were captured by Somali pirates in the Indian Ocean. They had been keeping a blog of their travels, but after not posting for a few days, the family became concerned. The area was known to be dangerous. Before they left, the family had agreed to not send them a message saying, "Emergency, call urgently," because they didn't want to cause any panic that might put them in danger. Instead, family member Sarah went onto Rachel's blog and simply wrote, "Please ring Sarah." When they didn't get a reply, they raised the alarm. It took an astonishing 13 months, but eventually Paul and Rachel were released. Okay, for our number 3 now, we have the Colombian message. This one is actually people sending a secret message to a hostage, but it's too good to leave out. In 2010, the FARC guerrillas had been holding some hostages from the Colombian government for years. The Colombian army wanted to let them know that they hadn't been forgotten and to not give up hope. They needed a message that would get past the soldiers but not an observant hostage. So they inserted a secret Morse code message into a popular song that was being played on the radio at that time. Listen very carefully here for the little bips in the background of the music. If you translate that Morse code, it says 19 people rescued, you're next, don't lose hope. The message was heard by them. The hostages didn't give up hope and were eventually rescued. Next up at number 2 now, we have the Chinese letter. In May 2017, an Arizona woman bought a purse from Walmart. When she got home, she found a note inside. It was written in a Chinese dialect and appeared to be from a desperate prisoner. The note said that prisoners were being forced to work 14 hours a day with no breaks. If they didn't finish, they were beaten. If they got sick, the cost of medicine was deducted from their salary. They signed off by saying saying prison in China is unlike prison in America. Walmart said there was no way to verify the origin of the letter, but some people say this is proof that companies are not doing enough to check where their products are being made. And finally, at number 1 now, we have stitching. During World War II, Major Alexis Castagli was taken prisoner by the Germans in 1941 and sent to a prisoner camp. He passed the time by sewing. He would sew intricate pieces with beautiful patterns on. The Nazis were so impressed by them that they would hang them in their offices at the prison. However, little did they know that the pieces contained secret messages. Around the edges was a pattern of Morse code. If the Nazis had decoded this, it would have read, "God save the king" and Hitler. Both of these messages would have got Alexis killed if they were decoded. Luckily, they never were, for 4 years, until the war ended. The stitchings have now appeared in museums in London.